Hello! Hello, friends. Here we are. Going live. Doing our thing.
It is wonderful to be back with you. This is part of our second week doing this here for Lent. Where is really the first week is done? So I don't know, this is the first week of Lent with Ash Wednesday. That's not the first week?
This is the first full week. No, this is the first full week of Lent that is behind us. Yeah. Yes. So hello to those people who are joining us. This is great. Good stuff. Cool. And get ready for your questions, because after we finish doing our reflection for this coming up week, we're going to start taking people's questions. We have some that people have already sent into us,
so feel free to message those in on the app there live. It is great to see all of you joining us. All right, so we are coming in. So just as a reminder, this is just a great Lenten reflection, but also a time for us to do questions each and every Friday. And
for those of you who listen to our podcast, we hope this will be a really fun thing for you to do. Just, when you listen to the podcast, I'm sure you have questions as you listen. Well, here's your opportunity to go ahead and ask those questions right now, and we can go ahead and answer them. And, so we're really excited to be here and to be able to do this.
All right, so as part of Cana 90, our Lenten program for couples, we have been giving meditations each week. And so the first week was about Adam and Eve in the garden and the complementarity between men and women. And that was week 1. And that's good. So we're going to give you a reflection that is looking at the week ahead in Cana 90, but also I think, even if you're not following along with Cana 90, although I don't know what you're doing, why don't you do that?
Exactly, it's a free program, why not, right?
But this is kind of building a foundation of understanding the Old Testament covenants and seeing them through the eyes both of the scripture and those main covenants, but also seeing how that plays out in our marriage and family life.
Right.
And so the first one was really going a little deeper into Adam and Eve in the garden and what that says for us in our marriage. But now we're going to look at really the second big covenant in the Old Testament, and that was with Noah and the ark. So right. we know.
Well, what do most people think of? Obviously, when you think of Noah and the ark, is you think of the animals and. Oh, isn't that sweet? God cares about animals and,
some kind of zoological experiment. I don't know. Right?
Exactly. That maybe this is just, whatever. This is, and then the unicorns didn't get on because they were playing. And so they all, gone. That's why there's no unicorns. I think that's it. Dinosaurs. I don't know. But that's not really what the story of Noah and the ark is about at all.
so Noah wasn't a perfect man.
Right.
He flawed in many ways, but
dysfunctional family,
very challenging family in and of itself, right? But what Noah did was he prayed, and he came into a knowledge of God's plan, and he lived differently than all the other families around him. He
prayed and he listened. He listened to what God was saying.
That's probably the most important thing, is that Noah's difference was that he prayed. He had some troubles. He had his own issues, but he really prayed, listened, and did what God asked him to do.
Right.
Right. And then what did God ask him to do? He build the boat. Right. Build that ark. And what did he do? God saved his family. It was I will establish a covenant with you, and you shall go into the ark, and you and your sons, your wife and your sons' wives with you. So it was like this extended family all together was coming together as part of the plan of salvation. Right.
And I think it's really interesting that in all of the evil that was in the world at that time, and yes, hello to our friends in Australia. So good to see you guys on here. But as as God was speaking to Noah, God could have saved any group of people. He could have saved, one person. He called animals from all over the world. He could have called one person from here, one person from here, one person from here. But he didn't do that. What did he do? He chose a family. God chose to save a family. And remember, like we said, this was a dysfunctional family who had issues. This was a very messy family, right? But God saved this family to rebuild society. So what does that mean for us? We say this all the time. If we want to strengthen our culture, if we want to renew our church, We have to strengthen the family.
Right. It all begins with the family.
And all of you, everybody here comes from a family, whether you're a married person or a single person, or you have grandchildren, or you have no children, or you just have a whole bunch of little kids. Starting within your family, we all come from a family. We're all part of a family. We need to work on strengthening our families to renew society. And so God established on that day a covenant with that family. And by that covenant that he made with Noah, God is making a covenant with us, with every family.
And when you think of covenant, again, the whole idea that
sure, what's covenant?
Covenant
right?
is different than a normal contract. The easiest way to think of it, what it's not, right? In some ways, a contract is an exchange of goods. Hey, I'm going to give you this in exchange for that. But a covenant is an exchange between persons. And so God entered into a covenant, a sacred binding, both of those people to him, but also God to those people.
Right.
And these are the words, that you might hear in a covenant, for richer, for poorer, in good times and bad, right? Does that sound familiar? That's the covenant, the promises that we made on our wedding. And that was a covenant, right? And that covenant is what God entered into. So on our wedding day, we entered into a promise to each other, a covenant to each other, but also God made a commitment into our marriage, into our relationship. Right. And that power, that investment that he made is something that is with us today, right? And what we want to encourage you to think about is, what is the signs of God's presence, his promise in your marriage, your relationship, your family? Mm-hmm. Because when he made a covenant with us, he gave us goodness. He gave us grace to sustain our life. Mm-hmm. And
I think too, it's important for us to remember is that covenant sustains us through our storms, right?
Through our
that covenant, right? Through our good times and bad times, till death do us part. That God is there with us, and that he has made that promise that he will be there when couples call us or email us and tell us about really difficult struggles that they are going through, whether it's sickness or death or divorce. It's sometimes when I feel like I don't have the words to say, the words to speak to them, I'll say, you know what? All I know is that God is with you. I know that God is with you because he made a covenant to you. He promised you that he would be with you with your marriage, and he will be with you in your family. And we really need to depend on that and really rely on that grace. So when you think of the story of Noah and the ark, don't think about just the animals. Think about God's covenant to his people, God's covenant to a family.
That's right.
And then what was his sign of that covenant? What was God's sign of the covenant? The rainbow. That was what God said. I will put my bow in the sky as a promise to you of my enduring love for you. That's not exactly the term. I don't have a Bible right in front of me. But he said, I will put my bow in the sky as a sign of my promise to you, my covenant to you. The sign of my blessings. We need to look for that too.
Yeah, and what we want to also encourage us to do as families is to recognize that Noah was responding to a call.
Right.
He lived differently than other families in the world of his time. He stood out because he listened to and tried to follow God. It wasn't perfect, but he lived as he could in obedience to what God asked him to do. In our culture today, are we living in contrast to those that are around us? Not as anti any of our neighbors, but are we living accord with God's law? Like, are we living in such a way?
Good thing is that it's becoming easier and easier to look different than
That's
people
right.
around us, unfortunately.
Do we let our light shine? God may not be calling you to build an ark.
Right.
But I can tell you there is a mission and a calling to build something, right? For your family to have its own mission in this world. And so we need to spend some time saying, what has God called our family to?
Right.
How are we supposed to be that light in our neighborhood, in our community, in a powerful way? And how do we be that sign of God's presence in our world? First through our marriage and through our family, and out from there.
And really, in some interpretations of scripture would say that the ark kind of represents the church, right? The ark represents the church that can get us through these storms of life. And I think that, like Mike was saying, we can also look at the ark and say this is kind of like our family that is bringing us through the storms of life, and that God is there to help us and to guide us, and that our family can be a safe refuge for us. And to look at, how is God blessing us? How is God blessing our family? What are some great things that he is giving us? What are some ways that he is helping us? What are some ways that he is helping us? And what are we being called? Remember that ark, that family, that's something that you build. So just as Noah was building the ark, you are also being called to build something. How are you building up? How are you responding? So kind of like so two things. See where God is working in your life, but then also turn around and say, Lord, what are you calling me to build? Where are you calling me to strengthen our family life or our marriage or our relationship with our kids or our relationship with our extended family? How is God calling us to do that? So, and I really think that Noah, if you think about the evil that was in the world at that time and how he was affected by that Noah was really living by responding to God. He was living in stark contrast to the world, not just because he was building this ark, but because of his family, because he was listening to God. Most people in the world were not doing that. So there's so much that we can look at in this story and be challenged by, lessons that we can learn from it, examples that we can follow. And I think all of that is just super important for us as we go forward. And it's a good thing to meditate on in this second week.
And for those who have the digital download or the printed book, you can or getting the free daily emails, you'll see in the week ahead that we have daily reflections on the building of the ark and what that might mean, some little scripture and some reflections for you. But this is what we're challenging folks to do as part of Canaan 90 for this week ahead. And again, building this foundation for your family. All right, so that's our little Lenten reflection, and now we want to get to some questions. So we've had some people send in some questions, and we'll respond to the ones we received. If you have more or would like to add them right now, feel free to do that in the question part. Okay, so first question here is meltdowns. I don't want them to stuff their feelings. Because we talk about this, right? We use the example a lot of times, kids' meltdowns, our emotions are like kids. You don't want them driving the car, but you don't want to stuff them in the trunk either, right? So starting with that quote, okay, meltdowns, but I don't want to dwell in the negativity, especially with older children. How do I respond? I'm assuming, how do I respond to meltdowns? I assume they're not talking about the mom.
Right.
Okay, so
mom's sometimes gonna have meltdowns,
right? But I assume it's talking about the kids and their meltdowns.
Yeah.
The first thing that comes to mind, and then Alicia will give you a better answer, is we need to really begin very early at teaching our kids the ability to have self-control, and this is done best. Not in a meltdown.
I was going to say outside of the meltdown.
Outside of the meltdown, in advance, that you're teaching them self-control. And I for those who've listened to us before, we talk about how I say to the kids early in the morning when they're little, and our grandkids are now doing this, who's in charge of having a good day? I mean, even just that simple, mantra that they hear over and over again, and we say, and their response is, I am. So what if somebody says something mean to you? What if somebody does this, does that? They do something. Are you still in charge of having a good day? Because
then in that meltdown, when you say that, and they have the habit of saying, I am, that's right. I am, then that's going to come back and you can kind of use that as a tool.
Because when you're in a meltdown, you have to have already some hooks into their heart, into their memory, to pull them out. Because sometimes in a meltdown, there is just this spiral, and their brain synapses have fused together, right? And we want to be able to break through. We got to kind of catch into that.
And actually, and I just want to say too, sometimes, I'm just going to be honest here, sometimes part of that spiral is mom or dad joining in the meltdown. Mom and dad start melting down because the child is melting down, and then that just kind of feeds off of each other.
Not good.
Okay, yeah, not good. Number one, first thing you have to do is you need to control your own meltdown. Make sure that you're not having a meltdown also. The next thing is you have to make sure that you're giving your child the tools to know how to handle their own emotions, which Mike just kind of said, and there's a couple other tools you could use. But even beyond that, I would make sure that your relationship with that child is in a good place.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times again, being really honest here, it's easier to not pay attention to your child when they are well-behaved. So when you have a well-behaved child, you're not going to give them as much attention as if they're melting down. And we as parents need to challenge ourselves, no matter how many kids you have. You have one kid, you have 10 kids, you work, you don't work, whatever. You really, really need to make sure that you are giving your children the attention they need, that they have that full love tank, that they kind of feel that they are known by you. And this is especially true for the teens, especially true for the teenagers. So it said here, especially with older children, I would say make sure that you're spending time. You're spending time with those kids, that you listen to them. You know where they're at with their feelings. You know if they're depressed. You know if they're down. That you're not just sitting around, we spent time together and watched a show together. Well, it's really not what we're looking for. Excuse me. We're looking for you to have spent one-on-one time with them where you're really kind of hearing where they're at. How was your day? How's it going with your friends? All of that. And that you're spending time with them doing things that they like to do. Where you're not just asking them questions, but you're doing fun stuff so that they really feel known and loved by you. And I think that that really does help with some of those meltdowns because you have that relationship with them.
And not always, it doesn't always happen that your both husband and wife are present for this, but there are different ways that men and women, moms and dads, can help kids out of this. And lean into that. There might be times where there needs to be an abrupt, like, hey, we got to snap out of this.
Yeah.
There's other times where it's going in to, I really want to, and really we do want to give them a safe space where they can talk about and voice their strong emotions. I mean, ultimately, that's what we're trying to give them, is a path to deal with this appropriately. That, hey, we don't respond to emotions, but we don't shove them down. We don't disregard them. We don't, hey, you're feeling really upset now. And trying to get them to think and speak is really, really helpful.
And I think part of that drawing out of them too is empathy.
Right.
You're
And moms are typically, again, both can be empathetic, but there's typically a time where mom is more empathetic and dad might see more objectively how to get this forward. And both of those are probably needed. You got to be able to objectify in some ways and identify those, but you also have to empathize and draw them out.
One phrase that we can use a lot is children need to feel felt, okay? They need to feel felt. They need to know that you are feeling what they are feeling. So when your 3-year-old is so frustrated because they want to put on their coat by themselves, or they want to have a cupcake for breakfast or whatever, it's so easy to say, oh, and this is what I'll do with my grandchildren. I have a 3-year-old grandchild. Oh, I would love a cupcake too. Yes, that would be awesome. That would be so awesome to have that cupcake. Or, yeah, I'm frustrated too. That really stinks when kids come to you, so-and-so was mean at me at school and blah, 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 blah. And I would say, are you kidding me? I am so sorry. But for them to feel felt, I think that is so important, that they know that you're with them, and then you need to move them through it because you're the adult in the room.
Right.
Okay. I'm going to do this first question, this first one that came in. Advice for step-parents as kids enter teenage years. Okay. I don't have a lot of experience in step parents, but the one thing that I would say is that kids are people too, and teenagers are people too. And it is possible, to be friends with teenagers who are not your own children. That is very possible. I don't know all of the ins and outs of being a step parent, but I do know that kids need love. Right. They need to be loved. And they need respect. And I think that that's sometimes hard for parents to remember. And maybe as a step parent, that was difficult for you to remember. I would actually, even looking at, youth ministers, teachers, people who deal with teenagers who are not parents, because I think step parents is obviously, that's a different kind of relationship there. But I do know that kids, especially teens, they want to be treated like adults. They want to be treated like an adult. Not that they're your peer. They're getting there, but I think it's very important that they are given respect, that they're given responsibility, and that you start to speak to them as an adult, because I think that helps them rise to the occasion, especially with boys. Boys want a 15-year-old, 14-year-olds and up. They don't want to be treated like a boy. They want to be treated like a man. And so sometimes it means having manly responsibilities, but it also means you don't talk to them the way you talk to a 10-year-old. You have to really change that way, because if you want them to rise to become a man, you need to start treating them in that way.
And I'll just back up for, in a certain sense, talking about teens in general. the more you can get in front of that curve and build that platform of relationship, the better. The longer runway you have, the better your success will be in discipling your teen, because ultimately that's what discipline as Christians that we're all about, right? As we are disciplining and creating authority for our kids and creating a structure for our kids, is so that they can become disciples, that they can become their own master of their own destiny, if you will.
Yeah.
And so as we are setting up that relationship in the preteen years, it really should bear fruit in the teen years,
right,
where we're giving them more and more freedom and more respect. Still having expectations, still having standards, still requiring them to participate in the whole family operation.
Right.
So again, in this situation, thinking of the step parent, the challenges that go in there, I think the rules are still the same. First, get your marriage right.
Right.
Love,
yes,
and have that so solid, and get on the same page with discipline. You two, as step parents, may have not been parenting together in the early years. Well, get on the same page now. This is essential for you, so that you have not only a united front, but your ability to love.
Yeah.
And discipline is part of love, but it's not the totality of it, because we need that relationship. The whole maxim that we often quote, we didn't say this yet, right? Rules without relationship breed rebellion. And rules are essential for you as a step parent or any kind of parent, right? But that we need that relationship to make this all work. But those are now oriented in the teen years towards making them ready when by the time they're 18, that they're ready to fly. And
you know what? Actually, you reminded me of one thing that I think actually is good advice for step parent, because I think it's good advice for any parent, is that you have to recognize that how you love your spouse, the witness of your marriage, is those kids are watching you all the time. Yeah. The witness of your marriage is huge. And I just realized is that that's true for step parents as well.
Absolutely.
And that the first thing I would say is love your spouse. Love God, and then love your spouse. Because if you can pray and pray and pray and pray as much as you want, but if you treat your spouse with contempt, if this isn't working, kids will look at you and be like, you're a hypocrite. Because I see you praying, and then you come home and you treat my mom, my dad like crap. It's like, don't do that. Because your marriage is that witness. And then they see, oh, I can believe what this person says, because they're praying, they're doing things not perfect. Because if you rupture that relationship, let the kids see you repair that relationship. Let the kids see you, oh, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? I should have spoken to you that way. That was wrong. All of that. And loving your spouse, I think for a stepchild, I think that's a beautiful witness. I think that could be a beautiful witness, and that's true for all children, right? Not just step kids, but I think that would be one of the first things. Okay.
All right. So
by the way, anybody who's coming on right now, please feel free to go ahead and send us in questions. We're going to be on just for about 5 more minutes, and we would be really happy to take any other questions if you want to put them in there.
I'll do this one here. How to keep preteens and teens interested in the faith. Any book recommendations? Thank you. Yes. All right, so preteens and teens.
I was going to say, how to keep them in the faith. Listen to our podcast, because we have several podcasts on passing on the faith to your children, evangelizing your children, discipling teenagers, all of that. I don't have a book that jumps to my mind, but...
Well, I think it all depends on where you've been so far. If this is a new entry at this point, that's not a problem. You can always start. Lent is always a good time to start, and so you want to start small. But if you're already building on a very solid foundation, well, then you can go to new heights, because we can't. If you want to pass on the faith, going to church on Sunday is not sufficient. Yeah. Like when you were an analogy, when your kids are little, if the only time you were asking them to sit still and be quiet was that 1 hour that you were at church on Sunday, you've got a problem, right? You've got to be praying throughout the week at different times. You have to make sure that the faith is alive in you and coming out in your home, that you are acting like the priest of the home. That if you don't pray before meals, grace before meals, start there. Having dinner together, right? Recognizing that the Lord's Supper, the Paschal meal, the Mass that we go to, has an ordinary form, not sacramental, but in our home, around the dining room table. And so building foundations like that, adding on, we're going to do night prayer, or we're going to pray a rosary as a family. But as they get into teen years, the expectation should be that they're beginning to claim the faith as their own.
Right.
And we highly, encourage things like finding a great youth group, taking them to a Catholic summer camp if you have one around you.
Yes.
Looking for like Franciscan University's youth conferences had a profound impact on both of us. Looking for those experiences that can help them go to a new level.
Help them recognize they're not the only teen in the world who is living the faith. And I think that that's really important.
But you've got to set the expectation that we are now, we want you, and how do we make that easy for you to begin as a teen making prayer your own? And so again, Lent is a great time for that. Maybe it's for one of your kids reading through the lives of the saints. Something as simple as that. Many saints have actually been converted by just reading those stories. Maybe there's a modern novel, and we have some that we that we have used over the years, where have just been a great Christian Catholic story that illuminates the imagination for our kids.
Yeah, there's a great study that I would recommend. So this isn't exactly a book, but it's on the McGrath Institute of Notre Dame. And it's American Catholic Religious Parenting, came out in 2019. It's it's a free PDF. You can go to their website, very easy to download, easy to read, and it tells you the ways that people have kept their children in the faith, and it's an empirical study. But one of the things that they said that really struck me is that it's conversations with kids, not just about spiritual things, but conversations about life. And just teaching your kids, this is how we engage the world as a Catholic. This is how my faith informs my relationships, what I do at work, the things that I listen to. This is how our faith informs current events. And taking our faith and applying it to all of those different things. Again, not just in a spiritual sense, but in a very real, practical way. This is how our faith can give us these guide rails. And I do want to throw in one little thing. If you have teenagers, be very, very careful where you send them to college. Yeah. I cannot tell you again and again and again. People will say at our events, my kid went to X college, that are nominal Catholic colleges. And I gave them 12 years of Catholic school and they walked away from the church. And
don't let your kids do that.
Not that the right college is perfect. There is no perfect college. Right? Nothing's going to solve all your problems. But it makes a huge difference where you send your kids to school. So our kids, they could choose where they wanted to go to college, and they could choose from 4 colleges. These are the 4 colleges you may choose from. Any of these 4 colleges you can go to.
Think again, we might be distracted a little bit, but just to finish that thought, it's like, do you think an 18-year-old actually is able to make a decision about what's best for their academic, their spiritual and moral life?
They are not. 100%. They are not capable of making that decision. So that's your job as a parent.
So as a parent, as we look at teens, we need to give them the guardrails to be able to give them freedom within, the right choices, right? We gave some of our kids the choice to say, hey, here are these 3 different youth groups that you can choose from, but you have to go to a youth group.
Right.
We're going to church as a family, but you'd prefer if we went at 9 o'clock as opposed to 11 or vice versa.
Sure,
okay,
that's
we're
fine.
open to some modicum of accommodations for them, and I think that's in a lot of areas of their life. We need to be able to set those expectations that this is what's going to happen. This is what we will be doing. But we want to respect you. We want to take your input into this and go on that path.
All right.
I think our time is up.
Our time is up. All right. So I hope that you guys join us next week. I hope you enjoyed our Instagram Live here and that you have more questions for us.
Anytime you want to put questions in, we will be answering them every Friday at 5:30 live. This session will be recorded and left here if you want to watch it again. We'll also post it on YouTube.
Somebody asked about will this be posted, so yes, it will.
Yeah, so thumbs up. Thanks for joining us, everybody. It is great to have you here, and God bless you, and God bless your Lent.
Bye. Goodbye. Thank you.